Over the past several months, I've made a series of videos which you can check out by going to videos and looking down through the list. A common theme throughout those videos is how any young person or person wanting to begin a farming career has basically no hope of getting into the industry. Now, there seems to be quite a bit of confusion coming from this series of videos regarding the farm where I'm at versus myself, which I'm going to try to clarify some things in this video. Everything you guys see on YouTube as far as equipment, as far as land, everything, I don't own. It's my father's. Myself personally, I own nothing. And at the age I'm at, I should own more. I have a desire to own more. The problem is the budget doesn't work. I take home less than people that are on welfare. Why do I do it? I do it because I'm building a family farm. It's myself and my father. And I'm building that because he's almost 80. He's not going to be around forever, and I will own it. Additionally, when I make these series of videos, it's not to say that our farm, and by that I mean my father's, doesn't have the ability to grow. Most of the ground is established ground. I owned it for years. You can leverage against that, and yes, you can expand. And if you watch what I've done with the equipment on there is growth opportunity. And even it has frustrations. It does not have the growth opportunities a business that size probably should. As I stated in my last video, farming is a case-by-case basis while we are all in the same tank together. So when I produce these videos, I'm talking about myself. However, I get the gut feeling that there are many more like me that are in the same boat. The reason I say I'm not alone is because in the United States, almost 50% of the farmland is rented, with about 30% of that farmland being held by an investor or someone not actively involved in farming themselves. And even about 3% is owned by foreign investors. And that percentage is forecast to increase as the average age of the farmer is increasingly getting older. The average age of the current American farmer is almost 60. Who's going to be taking all that over soon? Nobody's young's getting into it, and that's for the reasons I've explained. But I think we'll do a little bit more of a deep dive in this video to explain things further. Not an exact science by any means here, but seed, fertilizer, spray, planting, harvest, and hauling, and property tax, and tillage journey, mowing around the border, crop insurance payments, all that, pretty easily can be $500 an acre. And that's up quite a bit from a year ago. Now, you take a farm, and locally they've been selling for substantially more than what I wrote down here, but you figure $8,500 an acre, and that's per tillable acre. So say 160 acres has 135 tillable in it, and that'd be $1,147,500 to buy that chunk of ground, and say you can finance it at 30 years for 5%. Now, for the sake of this video, we were figuring on 0% down. Now, as far as yield history, I would just go off a county average, and our county average I think is about 185 to 187. We'll go off a county average, and we'll figure that the corn is $5. Now, before you jump over me about the $5 corn, we're going to use an average. You can go online to the ISU extension website. It'll give you all the futures prices from all the years throughout history. And when you're talking a 30-year mortgage, I don't think you want to bank on just 1 year of $7 corn. Your 1 month of $7 corn, you want to pretty much bank on a marketing year average or an average overall, depending upon your payment structure. So for this video, I chose $5, which if you average $5, but you look at 20-year periods, and corn usually doesn't change. Any commodity, in fact, doesn't change much more than maybe $1 or $2. So for this video, we're using $5. And as you can see, running these numbers at a $5 average, corn at $925 per acre gross leaves you at $137 per acre shortfall of making your payment. If you want to be able to figure up your payment quickly and easily, you can go to the Farm Credit website. Quick and easy, they have a calculator right here online, tells you exactly what you're going to pay and exactly what your payment will be per year. Figure up the tillable acres there at the 135, you figure up the shortfall, it's about 18.5 a year you're short. So say I'm going to go to town and come up with a job for 18.5 a year shortfall. Maybe you need to look at a different business. So what I did is I ran calculations on a bulldozer, and I had commented in my last video about how a bulldozer was more profitable than buying farmland, and it is, and I had to maintain that. However, I was asked, and not beating up the guy that left the comment because I enjoy talking to him, but they were saying that I shouldn't be complaining of supplemental income if I was in a business that was profitable. The problem is it's not really profitable. But here, let's explain this. So take a $300,000 bulldozer, 6 years of payments at 6%, payment of $61,379 a year, and you can go to the Ag Direct website. They have a quick and easy online calculator that will figure this right up for you. Now let's figure up 475 hours per year, and that's, because you're going to be doing additional things and running excavators and doing other stuff, and 475 hours, and it may not sound like a lot. You'd say, well, I could run 1,000 hours a year. Well, until you sat your ass in that seat 475 straight hours, yeah, it's a lot of hours. And it being hired at $225 an hour, and it is higher than some of the local competition, so some are as low as 180. Anyway, it's a gross of $106,875, and you figure that dozer right now, fuel, repairs, the undercarriage, everything else is going to cost you $85 an hour to operate, and that's a cost of about $40,375 over those hours. So you're going to make $66,500, and as you can tell, that machine cost $61,000, so you literally made $4,000. And that's if you had 475 hours of custom work to bill out upon. That's going and meeting customers, shaking their hand, closing the business deal, being able to get the job opportunities. That's not going to work for a construction company and jumping in their machine. That is doing all the legwork yourself. So I've been asked over and over, why aren't you still in the business? I miss the business. I love the business. I can show on paper that you can buy a new machine and you could actually squeak a living out with it. It was eating rice and beans, but you could make it work to a certain degree. And I'd love to go back into it, but the ag economy is crap, and it's been crap ever since about 2016, and that was our #1 demographic. So you have to start going to other forms of business and figuring out other ways of making a living, and that's difficult. So I don't want to go into a bunch of payments. Meanwhile, I'm trying to farm for an elderly father who really has just kind of almost dumped the thing on my plate. I don't really have time. And part of me says maybe if there was a good opportunity back in the excavation, I could prove it. Just the hell with the farm, be completely done with it, sell the whole thing, and go back into what I was doing prior. But that's a big trigger to pull, and I don't think that I want to cross that road quite yet. I mean, logically, looking at the numbers here, before going back down this road, you'd be better as well off just to take one of the semis and start hauling for commercial hire. Not to keep kicking a dead horse, and these turbine people are going to shoot me at this point, but to go back to these numbers and just say, okay, I got these turbines here. I'll put 3 of them on this farm that we just talked about at $22,000 per turbine. That's about what they're paying right now. It's $66,000. Well, we had that annual payment of $75,238 in that tract of ground, and you're damn near at the exact same negative value by not even farming it, just having the turbines only. But if you still farmed it and had the turbines, which because he can go hand in hand, as you can tell, having an additional $66,000, you start to break that down over that 135 acres of tillable. You got $488 an acre positive advantage, and you go back down here to where you're previously losing $18,500 a year, just short. So $137 shortfall. Now you're at a $351 positive gain, instead of falling, to clean up that negative. So instead of that farm costing you $18,500 a year, now that farm is making you $47,385 a year. If you're losing money and you're having to supplement it off another piece of ground or go to town and get a job, whatever, that is not a business. That's not anything. That's actually a complete liability costing you money. But if you are to make money off that farm, then it's an asset. When I say all farmers are in the same boat, when I ran that list of fixed costs to put a crop in, there are variances to that. Of course there are, but at the same time, there may not be huge amounts of variance to that. So that's why I say we're on the same boat. But where we're all individual or have individuality to our operations comes from, percentages owned. You may have a better discount or a better seed dealer or a different area or different yields. There's just so many variables that you couldn't even put it into one video. So again, when I'm sharing this, I'm talking about our area and myself in particular. But something I've noticed about most farmers is they're too willing to work for free. And a lot of times they don't view farming as a business. They don't view it as agribusiness. They view it as, well, thank God I don't have to work in town at the factory, or I don't mind working all week so I can go out and farm on the weekends. But at that point, if you're not making a profit with it that's a sustainable take-home income, and as you just saw my numbers, they're at $47,300 a year that piece of ground could generate. You could live off of that. So you could buy 160 acres and live off it. Imagine if you took that times 500 acres, that'd buy a full line of equipment plus make a living, plus buy a house. That's a business. That's actually making you a profit. If you're working all week to make a take-home income at a town job and you go home on the weekend to break even on a farm, besides having the hobby of a farm and enjoying doing it, why are you doing it? Because obviously you're not making enough to take home or live off of. Which isn't the point of any business, or the idea of owning a business. Isn't that to make a living? You know, most people look at these big greedy corporations. So take General Motors, for example. The big greedy corporation, oh, they got millions. Well, they also got millions or billions, maybe even debt. But the percentage of profit margin that they make is much better than, say, agriculture, which allows that CEO to peel off 30 million off the top. Again, that's using hypothetical numbers, but hopefully you're catching the point. So having had explained this, I hear farmers all the time saying, I wish there was more profit to be made, and they wish they could expand acres, and they hate seeing the investor coming into the area, etc., etc. But then when somebody like a wind turbine company pounds on their door, they'll turn down the opportunity. I don't get it. Any good business or any business school will tell you that a rate of growth should be about what the economy is, maybe 3% a year. And going back to those numbers, losing 18,500 a year, I don't see how there's any growth in it. In fact, I don't even know how you'd even pay for it or even get a bank on board. And that's exactly why that nobody young's buying ground. And yes, there are programs such as the Young Farmer Program, but the bottom line is you still got to be able to make the payment. And if you simply think that this is an opinion poll at this point in the video, then how come nobody young's going out there getting a loan? How come nobody's going and doing it? And that's not just my particular area. It's pretty widespread. That's not to say that there aren't examples where it can be done, but generally speaking, the demographics and numbers show that I'm telling exactly the truth, whether you want to hear it or not. And ironically, none of those internet trolls that I told to go find me an alternative crop, they still haven't produced anything. Now, going back to that number on the dozer, we did have that kind of work at one time, or I should say I did, and I could grow, and I could keep growing. Now, the problem was that, again, the profit margins were not great, but at least it did show growth potential. So, despite the fact it's showing growth potential, the reason, again, I'm not going back into it is because that opportunity has kind of died since, and I'd be just as well off to go to town work at a factory. Which, admittingly, myself included, does not want to do. So that's why I continue to go down the road that I'm on. And for the reasons I've just explained. The point of these videos is not really bitching. The point of these videos is to just maybe open people's eyes as to what the agriculture economy is like in general, or anybody young wanting to get into it, explain what you're up against. And the reason that we're having this, or the reason it is what it is largely based on factors that make it this way. We've allowed greedy corporations and CEOs and paid off politicians and everything under the sun to destroy our once halfway profitable business. I have a good friend who works a job, or has a business, I should say. He works himself in the ground, and he buys some farmland with the idea that someday he'll be able to stop his other job and then farm. But from my perspective, looking at him, he'll be near retirement age once he can, quote, start farming. Anything that he made for a year extra just went to supplement to buy that ground. So finally at age retirement, when you should be sitting on that money, instead now you can start building a career. Admittingly, the ground will be paid for by then and generate profit, but you'll have to keep working. That's his business, but if you're wanting to make money for yourself long-term wise, would have been better off to go supplement apartment buildings or something, get them going, then they would become self-sustaining, or even generate him an income per year where he could stash away quite a bit of money. But that's his decision, and he can do what he wants with his time and his life, and it's none of my business. It just comes down to a level of contentment. If you're the type of guy who's willing to work all week just to have the fun and pleasure of going and farming on the weekend, by all means go ahead and do it. But if you're somebody like myself who has growth opportunity in mind, business goals in mind, and then looks at the numbers and realizes that the field that you want to be in kind of has no hope without some form of supplement, and it doesn't have to be the turbines, it just needs some form of supplement. And that's besides working an entire separate career in town. When I say supplement, I mean something else the land can produce. Because, putting it simple, if you work in town, that is you putting your time, your body, your abilities at another career. Not doing what you're wanting to do, which is farm, while watching two tower structures out in the field generate the entire income for that farm. Those are mechanisms on that land. It's no different than having a plant, a very tall plant out there. But if you're at an income level where you don't feel you need to have any of those giant fans in your backyard, then by all means you do not have to sign up, or you do not have to want them. And as I stated in my previous video, there are negative sides to the sign up factor. There's pretty much no guarantee, which I do not like. I would rather be able to buy that ground with letter of intent of certain amount of turbines, and they probably could and should be out there talking to landowners, laying out plans of future builds before they actually do. In my previous video, I spoke about Bob, Jim, and Larry being the banker. You guys can go back and watch that video. So, know what I'm talking about, with the tract of ground in the center. Maybe say all three were friends at one time, but maybe say Jim and Larry had the falling out. So Jim is not on great terms with the bank. Now both guys have similar finances and similar sized farms, and the farm in the middle comes up for sale. Logically speaking, if everybody were to get along, they would divide it down the middle, and then these two would each go to Larry, their friend, or previous friend, and get an equal loan, and everybody would be happy. But because of the lives that we live now, and the greed that is amongst people, pretty soon these two previous best friends and neighbors are both wanting the same thing. Neither one of them wants to split it in half, but Bob, who's still great friends with Larry, is on a leg up advantage because Jim had a falling out with Larry. Maybe it was even over a stupid fight, or the fact that maybe Larry just didn't like the football game that Jim was watching. It could be that dumb. But anyway, so now he's at a disadvantage. So now maybe Bob has the ability to go buy this tract of ground in entirety. Now he just got a lot bigger, or grew, and it just put this guy over here out of business. And this is just a complete hypothetical. This is things that happen in life, and because we all need more or have the want for more, pretty soon somebody has less. There's only so much, but growth for some means less for somebody else. Which is why I firmly believe that we've developed an income inequality in this country. But, and I'm going to get shot when I do these videos, but anyway, but maybe say Jim decided, well, I'm down and out now since Bob got that ground, but there's a wind turbine company. Bob's doing to look at them damn things. So he goes and he puts up all these big fans out here. Now he's got all this extra income. This chunk of ground across the road that's way bigger all of a sudden comes up for sale. He doesn't need to see Larry. He can just go over here and buy it. Now he just blew Bob out of the water. So Bob's advantage that he had, or thought he had, now the playing field's not only equalized, now Jim's got the leg up advantage. It's kind of the way life goes around. If you look at the history of agriculture in a general sense, you had man out here, and you guys love these figures anyway. You had man out here breaking the prairie with a plow. I mean, you fast forwarded, you had tractors, and then you had the development of herbicide, and you had small individual hog confinements. You had livestock industry growing. You had 40 or Waterloo boy John Deere, turning into 4020s, turning into 8000 series, fading away with the livestock eventually. The progression of a farm continues to change, and you look at a 100-year stretch, it's changed very drastically. So what's up for the future of farming? You might be seeing something such as supplemental sources. In my firm belief that the future of farming is going to be in the fuel business as carbonless fuels. Now go back through every single video I've made, including this one, put it all together. And what if I told you that there was just completely the opposite happened 100 years ago? You could go out and buy a farm. You could pay for that tract of land and make yourself a living? What if I said it even went further to say that I could build a house, I could buy a line of machinery, as well as what that profit per acre made? Oh, you don't believe me? Well, my grandfather's living proof that exactly what I just said was possible at one time, but not now. And as I stated, everything does change. It's just that I don't like seeing that change because the opportunity that I have is much less than what he had. And as the business spectrum changes and as it becomes less profitable, that's why you're seeing a change in demographics. You're seeing the farmer that was a landowner now become a renter. You're seeing the farmer that was out there in the seat now go autonomous or become a $13.50 per hour paid guy that's or Mexican out there doing the work. And you probably will be seeing farms change what they produce, and that may not just be in row crops, that may be using the ground for other things. Sometimes we don't see change because it's too slow, and some people just need a giant sledgehammer to hit them between the eyes to be able to see anything. And whether or not you like change, it happens. It's continued to happen, and it will continue happening. As far as the family farm that I'm part of, we will keep evolving and changing things to meet demands or hope to continue to grow. However, I wish there was more opportunity in it, especially when I break it down to a personal level, which was fully explained throughout this video. In my last video, I attempted to do a call out, and what I was attempting to explain was the hypocritical financial situation that some farmers are in. To do a better job explaining what I was attempting to explain in the first video, I know multiple old farmers who sit around the coffee shop and bitch. They bitch continuously like they're going to go broke tomorrow. My God, you better save every freaking penny you got because you're totally broke. Meanwhile, they got $750,000 in the bank and every bit of their land's paid for. Gee, if things are that bad, you better put some turbines on your farm. You better go to town and start roofing houses on the weekend and mow yards, custom, do whatever it takes. Well, they don't want to do any of those things. They just want to bitch about things as the gloom and doom. So then I explain my case to where, hey, I'd like to at least buy a farm, and I need the turbines to be able to pay for it or something like it to be able to pay for it, in which they reply, well, I don't want to look at those things. Are you broke or not broke? Yeah, back in the 60s, we used to feed hogs quicker. I couldn't spend enough money, blah, blah, blah. Well, gee, I'd like to have some of those opportunities. The only opportunity is the following. Well, I don't want to look at that. You go to town, work a $13 an hour job down at the Casey's Dollar General Store. And what I get so irritated with some of these guys is because they're not only hypocritical, a lot of them are just self-absorbed assholes. So instead of most of them glooming and dooming and telling me how to live, maybe they should put themselves in my shoes to basically have no land and no money at all and say, I just want an opportunity to be able to make this for myself, same opportunity that they had, and they made it. I've tried. I can't repeat what they did, but they don't see it that way. And most of those old guys that rent their ground are getting as much per acre per year as what they paid for it altogether when they bought it. And yes, I understand some people are born in better situations than other people. Not saying anything in particular or anything in particular about anyone. I'm just simply expressing my observations as a societal whole or what I've been subjected to personally. You can call it a vent, which I'm sure many more of you have the same thought process and opinion. Gee, you're telling us there's no hope and you're saying your hope was yourself, so why would you do it? Well, I do it based on foolish pride. It's what I know, and in a way, it's all I know. And while, yes, I'm sure I could apply my talents in other directions and make a much better, much more rewarding career for myself, it's not what I'm interested in. I have always loved farming, loved equipment, and it's a passion. And despite its challenges, I guess it's something that I will continue with despite wishing there was more opportunity in it. And again, and it's not to say I'm waiting out family members, but at some point I will be the owner of it, and as far as a long-term income for myself, I will be fine. As for the short term, my life is essentially half over, and I would like to be building a little bit more for myself. Like I say, I will inherit it, but you shouldn't have to inherit a living. I mean, you should be able to build a living. And unfortunately, it's a career choice that doesn't allow that. At least not with outdoing some of the things we talked about in this video. As far as the dirt work business, again, to be repetitive, I would not mind going back into that, but I don't want to. It's kind of high risk going back into it, and I just don't think that there's enough ag work out there to make it sustainable. And yes, you could buy a cheaper dozer. I have a cheaper dozer now, or essentially the farm does, but it's not reliable either. That machine has enough wear in it that you might catch a few side jobs if you want to go put 475 hours on that seat. It's not going to be able to do it. It might handle 100 a year. And even at the 150 a year we ran it last fall, it had breakdown issues, which is not good when you're trying to make a customer happy and beat deadlines and time frames. So while it is an option, as I showed you in this video, it's not a super profitable option. I don't even know when I'd have time to put that many hours on the seat. And yes, I could put less hours on the seat if I had a cheaper machine. I get it entirely. But again, even right now, I just don't even hardly have any time to get our own work done, let alone take on their career. So it makes it very difficult. Then what am I doing? Just turning and burning iron? It's the same way with doing custom baling. It's the same way with doing multiple other custom operations throughout farming. Even cash rent on ground, just switching money for bills to profit. It's just, there's really no actual take home in it. And honestly, for that fact, as far as take home pay, I mean, it's a whole discussion in its own. If you're happy making $32,500 a year, then that's fine. I think you're below poverty level, but I mean, average should be like $55,000, $57,000 for an average family. And unfortunately, like I showed you, a farm needs money to pay for the ground, let alone generating that kind of take home per year. And not to mention, a bank just isn't going to loan it to you unless you have something to borrow against or some sort of lever intent to do something else with the ground. And even then, it's higher risk for a bank. So everyone on the main channel wanted to see, well, what's the behind the scenes on the farm? Well, it's a lot more than just shiny equipment. It is, and this is again from my personal perspective, but it's what comes with the territory. And it may not be a real positive thing, but life isn't super positive. And there's much more that could be discussed on each one of these topics. I mean, I had a lot of talking points throughout all these videos. And if I'm clearly missing something, point it out, or go make your own video. And if you guys have questions, I'm almost going to open this up to a Q&A. Maybe make like another video after this that would address all the comments, if you're willing. So hopefully this explained it a little bit more detail and clarity, and appreciate you guys watching. I do it for the guys that are reciprocative, and I enjoy talking to. So see you next one.